Tonight, slow recovery, water restrictions in Calgary with no firm timeline on when a massive problem will be fixed. The possibility of a major city running dry.
The reality is that we may run out of water.
And the warnings for those using too much. The first step toward controversial changes to the capital gains tax and the political test ahead.
Taxing capital gains is not an inherently partisan idea.
Also, new video of the shocking crash between a seaplane and a boat in BC, and somehow only minor injuries.
I was seeing the plane sink right before our eyes.
Plus, express theft, the brazen tactic used by porch pirates.
We work hard to get the things we have, and for them just to be taken.
And the Canadian fan frenzy in Florida.
I don't really want you on the bandwagon.
It's a once-in-a-lifetime experience.
The traveling cheering section hoping the Oilers will eventually hoist the cup.
CTV National News with Omar Sachedina.
Good evening, everyone. The risk of running out of water remains a threat in one of Canada's largest cities tonight. The 50-year-old water main, which supplies water to more than half of Calgary, failed last Wednesday. And nearly a week later, there is still no indication why.
Doing a lot of investigation and taking steps in that regard.
To prevent a water crisis, the mayor has urged Calgarians to conserve. And the urgent appeal appears to be working. Yesterday, the city used about 457 million litres, compared to 650 million before the break happened on Wednesday. That's enough to fill about 260 Olympic-sized swimming pools. CTV's Tyler Barrow on the impact of the restrictions and how long they could stay in place.
I have to boil water first if I want to do a couple of dishes or silverware, but otherwise it's just not worth it for the amount of water I'd have to waste.
This has been Bowness resident Lynn Francis's life since Thursday. Letting dishes pile up, boiling water, not using her shower, or grabbing water from a water wagon.
Feeling lack of independence, really, having to rely on other people, which it's great that people are stepping up and helping out each other, but barely able to cook my own meals, having to eat out more.
A business close to where the break happened saw their customer flow dry up.
We do depend on walk-in traffic, but as you can see, business has been kind of closed down, but it's been slow for us.
And it's not just businesses under the boil water advisory affected. Since the whole city is under a water advisory, this garden center is feeling the impact.
If you can't water when you get home, why would you buy it, right?
Adder had to lay off a third of his seasonal spring staff early due to the advisory. This past weekend was usually his third busiest of the year. He sold about 50% of his usual sales. Just something else he has to face with the current weather conditions.
Just when we were starting to gain some ground in June, this happened.
Crews are working around the clock to fix the main feeder water line that erupted Wednesday night. Workers are removing a section of the damaged pipe while inspecting it to determine if any other parts could be vulnerable.
The focus now for us is truly on restoring the supply that we have for the city, and that's where our efforts are focused.
Restrictions are expected to be in place until at least Friday. Mayor Jyoti Gondek did laud Calgarians' efforts to bring down water consumption efforts, but mentioned for a good chunk of Sunday, water demand exceeded supply.
The reality is that we may run out of water. And I don't say this to scare people, but I think it is incredibly important for us to understand how serious the situation is right now.
Late tonight, Alberta Health Services removed the boil water advisory for the community of Bowness. Some much needed relief after what's been a difficult week for residents. Tyler Barrow, CTV News, Calgary.
The federal finance minister pushed back on criticism today from Canadian doctors who are against her government's proposed changes to the capital gains tax, insisting provinces should use the additional revenue to pay doctors better. The comments came on the same day she took the first legislative step to implement the changes. Here's CTV's Mike Couture.
Taxing capital gains is not an inherently partisan idea.
Finance Minister Chrystia Freeland pointed to past Conservative governments under John Diefenbaker and Brian Mulroney, who she says moved towards tax fairness. But while saying this isn't a partisan issue, Freeland added this.
I do think this is a moment when Canadians should be watching closely what happens in the House and watching closely to see how all MPs vote on this, I would say, defining measure.
The measure is to hike the inclusion rate on capital gains from 50% to 67% for people earning more than $250,000 in profit on the sale of assets or investments. Many believe the Liberals separated this from the main budget bill to put the Conservatives on the spot.
Their hope is if they can draw the Conservatives into a direct debate on this question, that maybe they can skew a little bit towards where the majority of voters are.
A Conservative leader, Pierre Poilievre, has not said how his party would vote on this because the legislation hasn't been public until this point. However, a statement from his office called it a tax, adding, "Doctors, small business owners, and Canadians saving for their retirements have all raised opposition to Trudeau's next tax hike. But he is desperate to pay for the $61 billion in new inflationary spending announced in the latest budget." The NDP is already lining up to support the changes to capital gains, despite the politics at play.
The fact that they're not only moving forward on this, but then separating it out of the budget to make it a wedge issue for the Conservatives just highlights that they want to make this a political point.
A political point or not, it'll all come to a head in a vote on this bill, which could happen as soon as tomorrow. Omar?
All right, Mike, thanks. A troubling new snapshot tonight of just how difficult it is for Canadians to put food on the table. CTV's Sarah Plowman on the struggle to meet one of life's basic necessities.
In line at the food bank, this couple knows exactly how much cash they have.
I've got about negative $15 in my account right now.
Rent, bills, groceries. Even with jobs, costs drag them down. Help here temporarily lifts them up.
There was no real need of it before, but now things are getting a little bit too dire.
Nanos research found nearly 1 in 5 Canadians say they, their family, or friends used a food bank in the past 12 months. That nearly 2/3 of Canadians are buying less expensive food. Nearly 1/3 are stockpiling it, and 1/5 are eating less. Here, many people are new.
I'd rather go to the food bank than not have medication.
Across the country, demand at food banks has surged.
Over the course of the last 2 or 3 years especially, significant ones, 40%, 35% year over year.
The Nanos survey found a majority of Canadians say there isn't enough support for those unable to access or afford enough nutritious food.
This is an income problem here. We need affordable housing. We need decent work where people have stable jobs that pay a decent wage, and we need social assistance rates that come anywhere close to meeting the cost of living.
As they get a food basket, this couple donates cans of beans and peas. Another person in line offers them a lift so they don't have to lug their food home by bike.
I believe in what goes around comes around.
Strangers who share a need and a desire to help others. According to the survey, 40% of Canadians donated to food banks, while about half of that gave to close friends or family. Omar.
All right, Sarah, thank you. Dramatic new images from Israeli police today of the daytime mission to rescue hostages from Hamas in Gaza. This is the moment Israeli commandos stormed a family home in a refugee camp and found 3 male hostages inside this apartment. As they escaped, the IDF says a firefight broke out between Hamas and Israeli officers. One of those held captive was this 21-year-old who made it home one day after his father died and just before his mother's birthday.
Yesterday was my birthday, and my wish came true. I haven't stopped smiling since.
But there was mourning in Gaza. Israel's largest rescue operation also claimed Palestinian lives. 274 were killed, including 64 children, according to the Hamas-run health ministry.
The family is destroyed, and my house is destroyed.
America's top diplomat met the Israeli prime minister today. Antony Blinken is urging Hamas to accept a ceasefire proposal he says Israel has accepted, but one Benjamin Netanyahu has not publicly endorsed, facing growing pressure from Israel's far right to reject it. Roughly half of the world's population has or will vote this year. And the French just got added to that list. President Emmanuel Macron has called a surprise election just as the political tide shifts right in the European Union. Here's CTV's Geneviève Beauchemin.
The front page of the famed newspaper Le Parisien dubbed it a thunderbolt, just 6 weeks out from the Olympic spotlight turning to Paris.
Je dissous donc l'Assemblée nationale.
President Emmanuel Macron's move to dissolve France's National Assembly threw the country's politics into disarray.
He opens the possibility that the extreme right arrives for the first time.
Macron's presidency isn't up for election. His term ends in 2027. But he called a snap election of the lower house of parliament. On Sunday, in European parliamentary elections, the far-right National Rally Party, led by popular young leader Jordan Bardella, who teamed up with longtime far-right figure Marine Le Pen, handed Macron's forces a crushing defeat. And the president, say analysts, decided to take a gamble. He's asking French voters whether they also want the National Rally Party to control the National Assembly in France. We're ready to put an end to mass immigration, ready to make the purchasing power of the French a priority, said Le Pen. European parliamentary elections have long been seen as a protest vote. Macron will test that theory. But if he loses his gamble, he will be forced to try to govern hand in hand with a party that could block much of his domestic agenda. Some voters say the rise of the right is not surprising in a society where insecurity is growing. Others say it's a catastrophe, a sign of a France forgetting its history.
C'est une catastrophe historique.
Some analysts say while many mainstream parties held their ground at the European elections, some countries have seen a shift to the right.
Young people have moved from concern for the survival of the planet to concern for the identity of their country.
The first round of the elections will be held June 30th, leaving the French with little time to make their decision. Omar.
All right, Jen, thanks. The integrity of Canada's electoral process continues to be in the spotlight tonight. There are growing calls for an expanded inquiry into foreign interference, looking into allegations against members of parliament. Here's CTV's Annie Bergeron-Oliver.
The pressure on the Liberals to release the names of MPs alleged to have colluded with other countries is growing.
Opposition motion on foreign interference in democratic institutions.
With the bloc today forcing a debate on whether Justice Hogue should expand her foreign interference inquiry. The Liberals say they're on board.
We wanted to make sure that the Hogue Commission had the authority to follow the evidence. This might be a perfect example where they're able to follow the evidence in their own judgment.
But some security analysts disagree, saying Justice Marie-Josée Hogue's inquiry, examining allegations of foreign interference in Canadian elections and institutions, isn't the right place for such an investigation.
We have one former MP who may have worked and collaborated with a foreign intelligence service. That potentially could be espionage. That's not part of the ambit of the inquiry. So the government kind of owns this mess, and I feel the government should deal with it.
The members of the National Security and Intelligence Committee of Parliamentarians who released the bombshell findings last week today said they disclosed all they could and that dealing with the problem is now up to Parliament.
If there's consensus moving towards some way of dealing with this, perhaps if it's Madam Justice Hogue, I think the committee would probably say it's encouraging if we're finding ways to overcome some of the immediate partisanship.
The Conservative leader has refused a classified briefing on that report, but the NDP leader wants one and has vowed to take action against his MPs if necessary.
There is no way I will approve them to run as a candidate, nor would I allow them to continue to sit in my caucus if they are named and they knowingly worked with a foreign government to undermine our country.
The vote on that block motion to have Hogue expand her inquiry is expected to happen, Omar, tomorrow.
All right, Annie, thanks. A new warning tonight by the Public Health Unit in Canada's largest city over a sharp rise of a rare bacterial illness that can lead to meningitis. Here's CTV's Heather Wright on the best layer of protection.
13 cases in 6 months may not seem like a lot, but that's double the yearly average of invasive meningococcal disease cases in Toronto, enough for public health to issue a warning.
Yes, 13 cases, absolutely not that large a number, but compared to normal, it's a big jump.
Dr. Jim Kellner is a pediatrician who specializes in infectious diseases. Invasive meningococcal disease, or IMD, can lead to meningitis and is worrisome because symptoms can progress quickly and be fatal.
By the time they come to hospital, they can already be very, very sick because the onset of symptoms can be so rapid. And you can go from being well to being really critically ill within less than a day.
Of the 13 cases in Toronto, 2 were fatal, one in an adult, the other in a child. Toronto Public Health says this is the highest number of IMD cases since 2002 and is urging people to check their vaccine history.
Parents, make sure your kids are vaccinated, and also be mindful if you're traveling or if you have symptoms that this is certainly here and spreading in our city.
Toronto is not alone in seeing an uptick in IMD cases. Manitoba health officials warned of a rise in cases in January, while Kingston, Ontario, and the eastern townships of Quebec have also reported increases. Symptoms of invasive meningococcal disease can include a dark rash, high fever, stiff neck, and severe aches and pains. And up to 10% of IMD cases are fatal, according to Health Canada.
Even though we have antibiotics to treat it, often because the bacteria, the infection has spread so quickly, even the antibiotics don't work. And that's why prevention is so important.
Meningitis vaccines are part of childhood immunizations in Canada, but not every strain is covered and not everyone has the shot. The disease is spread in crowds and large gatherings, making big cities and congregate settings especially vulnerable. Omar.
Heather, thank you. Coming up, hey Siri, OpenAI. Apple plays catch up and enters the race for artificial intelligence. Plus, protecting yourself from porch pirates and their bold new tricks. Artificial intelligence is soon coming to your iPhone. Collectively called Apple Intelligence, the tech giant unveiled a series of generative AI products. Siri will get chattier and answer more complex questions like, what time is mom's flight? Or bring up a specific article. It will also allow you to create your own emojis called Genmojis. High-tech gadgets like iPhones are often ordered online and shipped to your doorstep, making them a hot item for porch pirates. Tonight, new signs the thieves lurking in neighborhoods are getting bolder. Here's CTV's Heather Butts.
Snatching packages in broad daylight, often captured on camera. Stealing from doorsteps is not new, but some porch pirates are taking it to a new level, leaving people stunned. Watch this brazen theft in Columbus, Ohio. A FedEx driver had just arrived with a delivery. He'd barely finished knocking on the door when a thief runs up from behind and snags the package. The FedEx worker in shock. The thief made off with a brand new Apple Watch belonging to Kyle Dorsch.
I was shocked. I mean, I thought maybe it was a joke at first. I just feel bad. It's a lot of people, including ourselves, who work hard to get the things we have.
Suburban neighborhoods like Montreal West, known for its large porches, have become big targets for thieves. And now some areas are seeing porch pirates dressed as delivery drivers. Amazon tells CTV News, while the vast majority of deliveries make it to customers without issue, we recognize that unfortunately there are bad actors who wear Amazon branded or look-alike apparel to commit package theft. A recent FedEx survey finds porch thefts are on the rise in Canada, with 1 in 4 Canadians saying they've had a package stolen. Professor Ben Stickle studies the phenomenon and isn't surprised by the numbers.
The volume of things that we're receiving in our home is higher than it's ever been, and the value of what we're getting shipped to us is also increasing. Think about phones, computers, jewelry, things of that nature. And then on top of that, this is a very low skill crime. You need almost no skill to actually walk up and take a package.
His advice, arrange a scheduled delivery.
A trusted neighbor who is at home or a workplace, you might be able to install a front porch delivery locker system.
To stay one step ahead of thieves who are becoming even more bold. Heather Butts, CTV News, Toronto.
Still ahead, a dramatic turn. Startling new video showing the moment of impact between a seaplane and a boat. New images of a shocking incident in Vancouver over the weekend.
And I was seeing the plane sink right before our eyes.
The video shows the moment of impact when a seaplane crashed into a recreational boat, sending 2 people to hospital with minor injuries. A massive fire tore through an apartment building near downtown Miami today. Dozens of firefighters battled the flames for hours as smoke filled the air. A suspect who allegedly started the fire is also believed to have fired a gun. A man injured with gunshot wounds was found inside the building. And a frightening sight at a packed rodeo in Oregon where a bull jumped the barrier. The bull charged towards the spectators, flipping a woman into the air. Moments before the chaos, the bull was seen running around the ring, then leaping the fence. 5 people were hurt in the rampage. After the break, Stanley Cup fever, the fleeting fans following the Oilers to Florida. Well, Canadian fans are getting behind the Edmonton Oilers in their Stanley Cup quest, even fan bases from rival Canadian teams. But the Oilers' diehards aren't exactly welcoming them on the bandwagon. Here's CTV's Paul Hollingsworth.
With each passing game, the size of the Edmonton Oilers fan base continues to grow.
Go Oilers, go!
Ryan Grantham, a Leafs fan from Hamilton, is not only cheering for the Oilers, he's also traveling to see them play.
Are you telling me the Oilers have become Canada's team?
I believe that's true, at least for this week.
But not after this week.
Not a chance.
Trevor Wheel, his friends call him McMullet, says thanks but no thanks when it comes to new fans joining the Oilers playoff party.
Honestly, no. If you weren't there with us through our 2-9-1 start, I don't really want you on the bandwagon. I like true diehard fans like myself.
For Oilers fans and non-Oilers fans who have joined the bandwagon, they all have one important thing in common. Everyone is having a lot of fun on this Stanley Cup run.
It's amazing. I've been to all 3 rounds, LA, Vancouver, Dallas, and now here. We're so close. It's coming back to Canada.
Being a fan takes time and money.
StubHub.com.
Ron Lestage spent an hour on the phone buying tickets.
They cost me 2,700 Canadian each for 2 tickets.
A hefty price tag for Lestage, who flew in from Kelowna, BC.
It's a once-in-a-lifetime experience. What if Canada doesn't get another cup for another 30 years?
If the tickets get even more expensive, Lestage says whatever the price, he will pay it.
Hey, go Oilers!
The experience of watching the Oilers win the cup would be priceless.
Let's go Oilers!
Paul Hollingsworth, CTV News, Sunrise, Florida.
And that's a snapshot of this Monday. For all of us at CTV National News, thank you for watching. Good night and see you tomorrow.